Sup, guys? Are we live? I think so. StreamYard had an update, so I don't know what I am looking at the moment. But I think it's working. So let me know real quick down below if you can hear me. Anyway, if you can hear me and I'm gonna not let you wait, welcome to the unexpected live stream. I don't announce anything. But I'm happy you're here. And if you're watching this back, I'm very happy you're watching this back. In this video, I just really want to go over what we can expect for the end of this bull market, because it is, in from what I see, it's all 50-50, right? 50% of the people says top is or will be in soon, and 50% is like, well, probably later. um and I just want to try to figure it out, and we won't get an answer before it happens. But let's try to see what the best odds are. So, for the people that are here, can you let me know in the live bar chats thing real quick if you can hear me? That would help me a lot, actually. Let's see. Making sure that I'm not talking to myself right here. Loud and clear as well. All right, that's nice. So I want to go over first the reason why people say that the top is in or might be in soon. And that's basically the argument is, well, 4 year cycle. So I want to take a look at the 4 year cycle, like, well, how accurate is it actually? And then I also want to take a look, like, okay, what are the other factors that come into play? And if you want to share your altcoins in the chat, go ahead, do that. We can definitely take a look at those. So if you're here, like the video. If you got lost and you feel like, what the fuck is this? Hi, subscribe to the channel. You might make some money, you might not. I don't know. We'll try, right? So yeah, let's go over the 4 year cycle right away. And first, take a look at, like, what is the reason that people believe in the 4 year cycle? Well, from what I see, I can't speak for other people, of course, but from what I see, right? And that was something that I was holding on to for a long time as well, is that people say, well, every 4 years, very structurally, there is a top. And that's correct. That's simply true, right? We had the top end of 2013, end of 2017, end of 2021. So sorry, still sick, so I'll be coughing like crazy one. We can definitely say, well, based on that, top end of 2025, right? um so that's one argument, and in my opinion, that's also the one and only argument, and that's not something that we should ignore. But it also doesn't mean that that's it and we should ignore the rest, because you also want to ask yourself, maybe, why did Bitcoin always top at the end of the post halving year? Is it because Bitcoin is sitting staring at the stars and feels like, well, it's the end of the post halving year, so bye? I think that there's a little more than that. Um, Crypto is, of course, purely liquidity driven, right? It's money that we're talking about. And if we look at liquidity, then there's more than crypto. But we'll come back to the other arguments in a second. So that's the reason why people might feel like, well, the 4 year cycle could be over soon or is already over, right? Because we always stopped at the end of the post halving year. We had the top in 2013 in December. 2017 it was in December, and in 2021 it was in November. Okay. It's now October, right? But look, December, November, October, might as well January. So I feel like, man, if we do believe in a 4 year cycle, then it might as well happen in January, right? I mean, if we look at November, yeah, it could be October. It could also be a month later, or 2 months earlier, 2 months later. It's all around 4 years. So there's not really a reason for me to believe that it should be in right now. It can, but I don't know exactly why. But there are a couple things wrong with the 4-year cycle. And I'm making this content right now because I see just a lot of people only look at this, right? They only look at that. And I get it because, hey, it's seasonality, it's scary, we know, right? That happened before. But they only purely look at that and they ignore everything else that makes actually a lot more sense. And they're like, well, it's in, I'm out. And I think that there is a really good chance that that's exactly where the max pain is going to be. That so many people expect it right now that it doesn't happen. It goes up, and people are like, fuck, I waited 4 years on a cycle that really should, was supposed to go up really hard, especially for alts. And right before it happened, I sold. What the hell, right? So that's, I think, a big problem. So what's wrong with the 4-year cycle? Well, the only thing that's actually not wrong is when the tops are in so far, right? But what is the 4-year cycle? Is it top to top? Is it halving to halving? Is it bottom to bottom? Is it what, right? Because top to top, always around 4 years. Yeah. However, the rest, if you look at the halvings, for example, the halvings always happen in the post, or in not in the post halving year, but in the what kind of year is that actually? In the pre-halving, in the halving year. Sorry, halvings happen in the halving year. Fucking hell! Good morning. Yeah. So if you look at that, we had the halving in November 2012, but here we had the halving in July 2016. We had it in May. We had it in April. Right. So having the halving, there was already half a year difference, right? Not just 1 month, like the top, like October, December, and something like that could be, right? But this was already half a year difference. So the if crypto only moves um, based on what crypto decides, right? Let's say it's not has nothing to do with money, it has nothing to do with liquidity, it doesn't look further than crypto. It's just crypto related, purely crypto related. What makes the cycle crypto related? Well, that's purely the halving, right? That's the only thing that's structurally. And I'll get back to some comments and chats in a while, by the way. So drop something down below and we'll get to that. But if it's purely based on crypto, then we can only look at the halvings. And the halvings already show us, like, oh, this is not every 4 years. It's around every 4 years, but it could also be half a year difference, right? So therefore, that might also be the reason that we had somewhat of a technical top in the last cycle, actually half a year earlier, right? Because in April, everybody thought it was over. All the top indicators, they flashed, and then Bitcoin went down, and it was like, no, 4-year cycle, bam, down, right? But yeah, price wise, did it matter really that much? Not really, right? So the halvings already tell us, like, okay, that the 4 year, that's kind of incorrect. Also, though, if we look at from halving to top, right? We had a halving to the top 365 days. But this halving to the top was 487 days. This halving to the top was 518 days. So that's increasing, right? So if we are in the camp, well, this time is not different, then I'm like, okay, so that will increase right here as well. And in that case, the top will come way later than where we are right now. So that's another thing that makes the halving a little, or the 4-year cycle, not make sense on its own, right? And then we also have bottom to bottom, because we can look top to top, right? But who decided that that's the 4-year cycle, right? Again, bottom to bottom could be, just as well 4-year cycle. However, this bottom to this bottom was 1,369 days. This bottom to this bottom was 1,218 days. That's half a year difference, give or take, as well. This bottom to this bottom was 1,431 days. Right? That's even more than 200 days difference. That's like more than half a year, right? So that has nothing to do with the 4-year cycle as well. So the only thing about this whole 4-year cycle, I don't know, bottom to bottom doesn't make it 4-year. Halving to halving doesn't even make it 4-year. Halving to top doesn't even make it 4-year. The only thing so far are the tops. But if the 4-year cycle is already full of holes and mistakes and not accurate like that, then I'm like, how wise is it to ignore everything that actually drives liquidity, drives money, and make it make sense, right? And only look at a 4-year cycle, which is already 75% broken. Are we willing to bet our money on that? And I'm making this content because I think it is very, very dangerous in this case to assume that. Especially if we look when Bitcoin came up, we had a pretty clear top right here as well. But it was in 2011, right? Like you could say, like, well, yeah, 2009 to 2013, that was 4 years, and that's true. But in between, we had the biggest bear market we ever saw for Bitcoin. So and you could say, like, yeah, but back then it was new, right? But I thought that it was like a 4-year cycle. Then when did that start? Like, there are so many things in the 4-year cycle that don't make sense. There's actually just one thing so far that does make sense based on just so far three, well, actually 2.5, because this was really not, but data points. And I'm like, okay, um, that's a big problem right there. Now there are other problems with it, and I wrote some down because again, the halving is not every 4 years, bottom not every 4 years, whatever. But then we also have the seasonality kind of sayings, right? Sell in May, go away, and October, and all of that. Well, if we apply these seasonality kind of things in this cycle, sell in May, go away. This was in May. If you sell in May, yeah, fuck, you're gay. That's like not great. If you sold in May, yeah, you missed out on the run towards new all-time highs, right? So even the cyclical sayings in crypto, they turned out not to be really right, and now people said, like, well, October, and so far, you know, Bitcoin is down 2.3%. October, it still has a week. Anything could happen, but it's not really the kind of October that people were wishing for, right? So also when it comes to that, I feel like the seasonality and the cyclical behavior always slaps people in the face, right? The people that thought we were going to sell in May, they got wrecked. The people that thought it was going to be October, they got wrecked, right? So all these kind of things, it's falling apart. The whole 4-year cycle is kind of falling apart. And there is one little piece that so far has been holding it up. Yeah, that's kind of like, I don't know if that goes against the rest of the arguments that we're going to discuss right now. And again, I'm not saying like, hey, it will be extended, because I have no clue, but I'm trying to find reasons why it could end now and why it could not end now. And to be honest, I have a hard time finding a reason why it should end now, right? Like people seem very convinced. 4 years, that's it. Like, yeah, okay. But if you look at this, then do you really still think that? Actually, I don't know about that. Um, Also, and that's where it starts to be a little weird, in my opinion, is that most of the people that are actually sticking to the fact, well, no, it's 4 years, it's seasonality. Seasonality is everything, right? Isn't alt season part of the same seasonality? We didn't have that yet, right? So I feel like, okay, so that is different, or that is different, but the top is not different. Like, which parts of the seasonality are, or is that what you want? Is that what suits you? Because some things are the same, some things are different. Like, it's hard to lay a finger on that, right? So I think it is for both camps, like whether you are saying like it will be extended or it will not be extended. I think like, well, hold up, because I think that we are now in the stage of this whole crypto market where everybody has to admit, like, well, we don't really know by now, right? We have no fucking clue. And what do you do if you have no fucking clue? Then you try to analyze the things that you do know. And what do we do know? Well, we do know, for example, how indicators are doing, and I'm not only talking about technical indicators, but also the sentiment and the macro, etc. We do know how these things are doing, and we do know how crypto and Bitcoin always responded when these things were doing something. Right? So if we look at that, then I'm like, okay, Bitcoin had three tops, for example, right? Just one small example. Bitcoin had three tops at the end of the post-halving year, and that's where it ended. Nice. What's also just as accurate as that, if you, for example, look at the whole business cycle, right? Because if you look at the whole business cycle, which goes back to the 1950s or so, right, which has way more history than Bitcoin. So in my opinion, if you are a believer of the 4-year cycle, then this should even be more convincing to you, right? But if you look at that, when did Bitcoin always stop? Right? If you overlay Bitcoin, which is for some, it's green, like that's also something, right? Like it's green, it should be green right now. But if you look, when did Bitcoin always stop? Bitcoin always stopped when the business cycle was sitting at 50, 60, the ISM, right? When the ISM was up. Bitcoin here topped when the ISM was up. Bitcoin here topped when the ISM was up, right? Well, 3 out of 3, just like your 4-year cycle, right? So if we look at that right now, hey, that's actually really low at this moment. And low on the ISM always says, like, hey, we have a big run actually coming for Bitcoin. So only this one single, indicator or overlay is already just at least as accurate as the whole 4-year cycle theory, or even more accurate, as we just saw that the 4-year cycle is kind of hanging by a thread because almost everything already kind of showed that it's off. And that's just one thing, right? But this makes a bit more sense as well, because this is actually how the whole cycle moves, not just crypto. And we know that it's one big bunch of liquidity. So if you're finding a narrative as well for, hey, why does an asset go up, right? Why does a financial thing moves? Well, because of the bigger financial aspect of it, right? So it makes quite more sense than saying, well, no, it moves because it's November. Like, so I really, and I don't want to say it out too loud because it could be that it topped somewhere around this quarter. Um, but the more I look into it, the more I feel like, man, actually, this whole 4-year cycle theory, what a nonsense could that actually be? Now, this is just one indicator, right? But we also have technical indicators, right? And there are things that are very, very accurate. And one of these things actually is, for example, let me get to that, the pi cycle top indicator. Right now, why is that a good indicator? And that's just one out of the 50 kind of indicators that exist, right? That you can use. Well, the pi cycle top, these are two moving averages. And it kind of shows like, hey, if a short-term moving average is crossing with a long-term moving average, the story behind that is actually that the shorter-term momentum is overheated compared to what it does long-term, which is saying like, hey, it is now actually overvalued, right? That's kind of what that indicator is showing. And if, for example, we have blockchain decoded coming out soon, but if you look at this indicator, yeah, that risk level is currently sitting at 26%. That's where you would say like, wow, this is where you DCA in. This is where you buy, actually. These are bear market territories, right? So there is no form of overvaluation at this moment as well. So if we already see like, hey, we don't have a lot of reasons for the market to go down, and we also see like, well, yeah, but it's also not overvalued. Yeah, then that's another like kind of confirmation. Like, then why? The reason for why it probably will not end soon. These reasons are kind of adding up on top of each other. Right now, I'm gonna dive into some comments, but this is like also one last thing, by the way, the sentiment, right? Also, if we talk about seasonality, yeah, here we go, right? When did Bitcoin top? Well, it's not only when, as in which month, but also when, as in during what, right? During insane fucking euphoric sentiment. During and here I wasn't really there. I did sell my Bitcoin for $800, but I wasn't really like involved in the market. Here I was though, and the sentiment in 2017, like it's undescribable. That was like nuts. It was like it felt like this is a life hack. This is a money printer. You just put your money there, and a day later you 10x it. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it was nuts. Yeah, that sentiment was off the charts. So of course, then it tops. Right, that's the trap. 2021 as well. Like most people were saying, 100K. Right? Everything was going nuts, and most people that watching right now, they probably were there. Yeah, that sentiment was nuts. Right, and if we then look at all of this so far, right? And then we also now try to realize what is the sentiment. Yeah. Like I don't think that there's anybody that says, wow, the sentiment is like what a euphoria. Like, no, not really, right? And markets also in TradFi, find me one top based on bad sentiment. One. There isn't. So apart from that, it makes literally, it starts to really make zero sense if you ask me. All right, so that's the whole thing about seasonality. There's sentiment, there's the alt season, there are these sayings like sell in May, October, the bottom or the halving up till the top, which is off, the bottom until the bottom is off, the halving until the halving is off. And that people say like, well, right, that's all true, but still top to top to top, so I want to be cautious about it. Definitely be cautious about it, because there is still something that makes a little sense. But I feel like, yeah, it's one out of the 8 things that's so far still accurate until it's not, right? And if you, for example, yeah, Bitcoin moves therefore in a 4-year cycle, because it's probably not crypto related, right? Again, otherwise the halvings make sense, the bottoms, they make sense, all of this what we just discussed, that would make sense. That's all crypto related, but they're not. They are not in a 4-year cycle, these things. So isn't the 4-year cycle moving because we have a macro 4-year cycle, right? Is that why crypto is moving like it's moving? Yeah, that makes a lot more sense to me, at least, because again, crypto moves because of liquidity. It's that simple. It's all liquidity driven, right? But is liquidity, is that crypto related or is it macro related? That's macro related, right? So therefore, we should look at the macro indicators, which we just saw, the ISM, which is one big macro indicator. Yeah, that's not saying that there's a top inside by far. And therefore, the impact on crypto, look at the liquidity, the M2, right? That's the actual literal liquidity. Yeah, the M2 at the moment, that's like that if you look at the current M2 and you try to say like, well, this is the top. How? Like, this thing is like going vertical, right? If you look at the balance sheet for the Fed, that's also something that has a big impact. And if we do look at the balance sheet, right, that's such great news that we just had. Because maybe by the end of this month, I don't think they have a meeting in November, so either it's this month or December. Um, but the Fed already said that they're gonna stop QT, right? And this is the balance sheet. It's very simple. If it goes down, that's quantitative tightening. If it goes up, that's quantitative easing. And if it goes sideways, it's nothing, right? And that applies to Bitcoin, but it applies to Altseason, to call it like that. A lot of people feel like that's the forbidden word by now, but it applies to Altseason even more because it really goes for risk assets. And yeah, Bitcoin is like, it is a risk asset, but if you compare it to altcoins, then Bitcoin is not really the risky one, or a one, right? Uh, and if you look at QT, we know that that's gonna stop, right? And I know a lot of big YouTubers, they said, "Well, we have no alt season because it's QT." Cool, QT is gonna stop. What's your excuse now, right? Like, if you look, we were blue line Fed balance sheet, right? We were in QT, and what happened? Alt season kind of immediately stopped right here, right? And then bam, QT, it stopped right here. That was the bottom for alt season reckoning. We had one capitulation very much later after that, but that was not like the down. This was the downtrend was over, and we started to go up. I can't even remember what happened right here exactly, but it was pretty short lived anyway, right? Then eventually we went into QE, and that's nice. Gave us an alt season, right? And then again, here we were not in QT or QE, right? And that was even a bigger alt season. So it shows like QE, based on past, we don't need that. QT though, we don't need that as well. Like that is not really helpful because we see in the last cycle as well, we have QT again, right? QE stopped right here, and we had QT again, and alt season again down, right? So we see that so far this is fucking 100% correlated so far, and we know that this now is going to stop. And yet people say, oh, bearish for alts. I would wait at least to come to that conclusion to see if this correlation keeps existing, because so far it does, right? So that's of course a big impact. And I think that these are really the dominant drivers of a full bull or a bear phase, right? Because if the balance sheet is going down, if the liquidity in general, if there is less money, then of course the liquidity driven assets are also going down. Like, how that makes all the sense, right? But then we have other things like the inflation and the interest rates, because this literally says if people have money to invest, right? People don't even have to invest in crypto. If there's more liquid, it will go up. But if people can invest, then of course it will go up even more, right? And that's a matter of interest rates, of inflation, and I think that that has an impact of like 15, 25%, give or take. Right now, the interest rates, we are in interest rate cut season at this moment. I find it hard to believe that when we stop QT, apart from what we all just discussed already, right? But that we're now stopping QT, that we're now starting to cut rates, and that's like, okay, bear market, like, huh? But that like, I try to explain that, please, because I don't really get it. Um, yeah, and then we have of course like the stocks, like what's the risk appetite for people, right? If stocks are going down, um it adds correlation, right? If the S&P is now showing like, whoa, this is looking really bad, yeah, then I can get it. But the S&P is sitting at a new high at the moment. It, like, this chart is not showing me like top is in. I mean, it could be a big blow of top, but it could have been here as well, here. It could be anywhere, right? Like, this is just in a full price discovery phase right now. So that doesn't really make sense. Now, also, if you look, for example, the 4-year cycle, like I said, so far crypto is somewhat in a 4-year cycle, depending on how you look at it. But it's also because the 4-year cycle again is macro wise, it existed for a longer time. Right now, we saw by the ISM that the whole business cycle is already like that's extended, right? Otherwise, we would have been way higher right now. Um, but apart from that, the S&P, for example, also already shows like, well, for example, here in yeah, like 2022, right? Bear market year for crypto. Yeah, the S&P went down. Maybe because crypto is correlated more to the stock market, right? And even more and more and more nowadays because crypto, especially Bitcoin, now has ETFs and it is on the stock market, right? So it is basically a stock, right? And you can see that in a midterm year, yeah, that went down. Midterm year here in 2018 as well. But what happened right here in 2014? The S&P went up. What happened in 2010? The S&P went up. What happened in 2006? The S&P went up. Right, so it shows as well that yeah, there are 4-year cycles in the stock market as well. But for the last 2 decennia or decades, how do you say that? Yeah, decades. It already showed that midterm year doesn't mean that it will go down, right? At least, like, in fact, out of the 5, we have 3 where it went up. And that's based on the last, like, the most relevant because it was closest to where we are right now. So, is there a at least very decent chance that this will go up next year still? Yeah. And again, crypto is being more and more and more correlated to the macro nowadays. So does that make it make more sense, in my opinion, that it will go up next year for crypto as well? Yeah, especially again on top of that, like a lot of people are now expecting a bear market. We never got a bear market when so many people expected a bear market, right? Like again, that sentiment is such an underestimated indicator. Now, it's also a matter because a lot of big YouTubers are now saying this. We, for example, have Benjamin Cowan, right? Who, who made some content lately, which I thought like, oh, wow, because he had an indicator and it was like, I don't know exactly, but if the 200 weekly moving average goes above or gets to the previous all-time high, that's where it crosses the top. And a couple months ago, he was like, yeah, that happened here and here and here. But now it's nowhere near that, right? Suggesting that this should go on for a long time. But now he made a video saying, like, well, yeah, but here it wasn't really that accurate. And I feel like, but a couple months ago, when you created this indicator, you were saying it was so accurate. Right. And I feel like, man, the big YouTubers are getting really biased about the 4-year cycle, right? Even Ben, um, which is a bit contradictory in my opinion, because that's the one person who created a whole freaking platform for indicators, right? And I feel like, man, okay, but apparently all these indicators don't matter anymore because it's now just a 4-year cycle. So why do you run such a platform if all these indicators are like not accurate? I feel like uh, even the bigger right accounts, they have no clue where to look at this moment, right? And again, just like me, I have no idea what's going to happen, but all I can look at, and I think that's what everybody should do, is why should the 4-year cycle make sense? And what are the reasons why it might not go like that? And again, there is a one reason, again, is the seasonality, which is still accurate for 25% because it's like I said at the beginning of the stream, it's kind of already falling apart. But then you have like, I don't know how many things that show that it doesn't make sense yet. Um, and again, in my opinion, it there's always max pain in the market. And I think really the max pain is going to be that people are just blindly going to say, like, well, it's October, November, so that's it. For no reason, but purely astrology based. That's it. And they sell. And then it goes up and they get wrecked. And in hindsight, they will look at all these other indicators and saying, like, fuck, it was so uh it was so obvious. Yeah, here you go. Let's at least like look at it right now, right? And then come to the conclusion later, like what was the right thing. Uh, but again, we have the ISM, which we spoke about, the business cycle, and that has an indirect effect on the whole macro growth. Yeah, and then you have the crypto native factors like the sentiment and the halving, right? And to be honest, I don't think that crypto moves that much just based on crypto, because and even if it does, like I said, the halving and all of that, it's not really 4 years. The sentiment, yeah, if the sentiment was like really great right now and everybody was euphoric, then okay, watch out. But even that's not the case, right? So what's left actually? um so there's my thoughts on the whole 4 year cycle. Now, to not completely ignore it, I do feel like, okay, let's say that everything I just said is bullshit, right? um, and that the 4 year cycle is the only thing that matters, right? Then still, I feel like, okay, but we had again top 2013, top, top, yeah, it was kind of both months, but November, December, right? December, November. So it could be October, it could be November, it could be December, right? It could be a month earlier, it could be a month later, it could be January, right? That makes it just as 4 years as the rest, right? Um, so based on that, we might as well still have like more than 2 months to go, right? January, October, oh Jesus Christ, November, December, January, 3 months. And then I feel like, okay, but watch out, because in the last 3 months of a bull market, a lot can happen. Look at this: October up 48%, November up 400%, right? And even here, we had November or October up 48%, November up 50%, December up 40%. Like this was kind of half of the whole bull market. But what if you here in October said, well, it could be over? Then you missed out on the biggest run basically out there, right? So still be a little careful, even if you, despite all of this, still think like that it's just like 4 years, that's it, right? Because based on that, the best part could still be coming. And then we get to altcoins, because that's the other thing that people are like, I know that at the beginning of this year, everybody said like, "Well, for your cycle, it will end sooner," and that didn't happen. And now they say like, "Well, no, this time is not different." Like I've been preaching, this time is not different for 2 fucking years, and that was like so far beautiful. And now that we are here, I feel like, okay, this time is indeed not different, right? So let's take a look at that. And that sounds contradictory, because timing, that might be different, but the reasons, I don't think that's different. And I think that reason, yeah, is more important than only time, right? But now we look at altcoins and people say, well, that's different. And I'm like, I don't know. Are you not a little biased at this point? So we're gonna talk about Altseason as well, real quick, and why betting against altcoins is, yeah, in my opinion, dangerous. But also, sorry to put it like this, but fucking stupid. Because again, it's kind of the same as this. Like, I'm on a search lately, like find reasons why it probably won't happen. And I discussed with people, I looked around, and I found zero reasons, really zero. So if you really think you have a good reason, let me know, because I want to find it, but I cannot find it really, actually. Let's dive into the chat real quick first. Let me check. In the meantime, do like this whole thing if you want. Somebody said, remember the last time November? It went up crazy in little 2 weeks. Last time November. You mean last year November? Yeah, last year November it went up, but that doesn't say much to me. Again, because it's not like, hey, in June that year that happened, so in June the next year it will happen as well. Again, that goes for the saying selling may go away as well. Yeah, that didn't turn out to be right. Right, October bullshit. I think like there's also something called coincidence. Right, it could be up in May that year and the May after that, and people feel like, oh, May's always up. Like, don't, not so fast, not so fast. So I'm not sure, but it could be that November is a good month, but not because it's November, in my opinion. People are not designed for changes. Yeah, I think it's hard to well, I think that if you are bullish, it's just I can imagine it's a little scary to just see like, well, we have a top here, a top here, a top here, so could there be a top there? Yeah, if you only look at that, then yeah, but that's the problem. People only look at that and they don't look at like anything else just discussed. So yeah, I don't know if there are like 20 things to look at, and 19 are bullish and one is bearish. You can, of course, look at, well, that one is bearish, so it will go down. Yeah, what about the other 19? I don't know. It's a little weird. Question: which quarter of each cycle was the Bitcoin top in? Yeah, this is what we just discussed, right? So that's the thing. That's seasonality, which holds on for 25%. Because yeah, Q4, right? Again, Q4, and we had here Q. What was it? 2, right? So even the tops are not actually accurate. But yeah, that's everything that we just discussed basically. So seasonality, in my opinion, yeah, it's a really weak argument at this point. I think I have so much trust in this ETH alt progress that I bought even today. Again, DCA. Well, even today, I mean, you have a pretty good. Yeah, look, that's the thing. Like there is a psychological money flow, right? That doesn't even apply to just crypto, but also TradFi, where people just first look like, hey, what's the safest asset? And let's write that up from the lows, right? Because why would you go into something risky if the safe stuff also goes up? And we saw the same in crypto. We saw Bitcoin run. We saw Ethereum run, right? And it's always the same. And this cycle, again, people said, right, especially if you look at the ETH dominance, and that's so funny about this, right? People said ETH is dead. Here, literally here. We had again also the biggest YouTubers flooding Ethereum at the April lows. And even they turned out to just be wrong, because low prices are good, right? But it's harder to imagine that, because a lot of projects, there are a lot of shitcoin projects that die, but it's not so hard to not invest in pure crap. Of course, you can be unlucky, but that makes people think that, oh, it's low, so it's gonna die, because a lot of crap dies. But overall, if you look at stuff like Bitcoin, like ETH, like the top 125 crypto, most is not crap, right? At least not for a midterm hold. But that makes people think that it will die, and then they look at ETH sitting at a macro bottom and like, oh, that's scary. Yeah, if you bought there, just like here, best buy ever, right? So we saw Bitcoin going up. People said ETH was dead. Well, these people got dragged because, of course, it wasn't. Then people said, well, okay, but other altcoins are not. Then we saw XRP, Solana, BNB, even Zcash, right? People wrecked again. And now they say, well, alt season won't happen because the money won't flow any further. And I feel like just don't just stop fighting this. You see it's happening, right? Like, why would you still like who are you helping with this? Like, you're not doing yourself a favor. Um so yeah, I have a lot of trust as well because yeah, it is kind of happening at the moment, actually. Happy Friday to you too, man. Hello. um Love you, bro. Oh, fuck. I love you too. Please look at the gold chart and overlay it with the Bitcoin chart. We can do that. BTC divided by. We just divide it, right? Then we have it all on one chart, basically. So here we go. This Bitcoin divided by gold. Yeah, look, I honestly do think it's kind of funny though that gold is now getting so much attention. Like, whoa, gold is fucking outperforming Bitcoin. Yeah, look, overall, Bitcoin is wrecking gold, right? Overall, it's just wrecking it forever. And we always have a moment in the market where gold is just outperforming Bitcoin, right? But we had it here as well. It was outperforming Bitcoin, outperforming Bitcoin, outperforming Bitcoin once again. Yeah, if you zoom out, then I feel like it's obvious what's better to be in for the long term, of course, right? And I must say that there's a lot of money in gold right now. Also, the United States has a lot of gold, but we also know that the United States loves Bitcoin. So if I was the United States, I would put some of my gold in Bitcoin, right? Not financial advice, Trump, but if you are watching, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're already secretly doing that or something. But yeah, analyzing the chart, look, it's in a uptrend, right? It made a lower high right here. To be fair, definitely. Then again, it made a lower high here compared to here as well. And then what happened? I don't know. I just like to look at the long term stuff, and it's just clearly in an uptrend, right? And you can see that in a real bear market, that's kind of looking like Bitcoin USD. In a real bear market, it just really goes down. In a real bear market, it really goes down. But is this really going down, or is this just like this and this so far? So uh, um, add indicators of Bitcoin mining companies as they provide early signals of Bitcoin's upcoming movements. I recommend monitoring indicators as Riot platforms, Iron Wolf, and Hut. Thanks for the tip. I will save that and add that. I don't want to fuck around with that right now and searching it up and looking at it right away. But Bitcoin mining companies, is it not like kind of diminishing as Bitcoin miners are getting less and less and less profitable, or do you notice that it's still as accurate as it was? But thanks for the tip. We'll do that, man. If don't have a clue, I go all in, of course. Yeah, if you don't know, just put all your money on it. Like, that's the best thing to do. Like, I don't know, take my money. So far, actually, kind of worked with crypto. Yeah, definitely, kind of worked. A lot of specific altcoin requests, and I will look at that later as well. But I really want to go over a couple general comments and then start to look like, hey, if you are afraid that alt season is not going to happen, watch this. You're probably not afraid anymore. And then we'll dive for the last part into that, and then we'll wrap it up. Alt season is a swear word nowadays. Yeah, but yeah, it's true. But look, it's also, and that says something about that it's also more likely to come, right? People feel like, oh, fucking alt season again. It won't happen anyway. And yeah, okay, and then it goes because, hey, did alt season ever happen when everybody was like, okay, I'm ready? Like, no. People had to get wrecked first. So yeah. Somebody says Cowan is too much in the clouds with his head since he was correct about the last crash. I think that look, I had a small well, not a clash with him, but I was asking some critical questions, I guess, in his Telegram private Telegram group, and that wasn't necessarily correlated. Um, yeah, I don't want to speak bad about him, but it was pretty hard to be a little critical about some things. So that opened the door because he sent me a DM on Telegram, and I figured like, hey, now we know each other. So um opens the door for me to say like, hey dude, I notice you pop up on some smaller YouTube channels nowadays to do your story about, well, what you're basically always doing. I feel like, can you come on mine as well, but not to do that same story, but if I can ask some questions in a return. Because often why I think Cowan is so interesting is that he's right about a lot of things, but also I noticed that he is, to call it like that, a little stubborn about certain other things, and that he looks at certain charts that, in my opinion, are not the right charts, and that he's a little biased. Again, for like, for example, Altseason, there's always a new reason why it won't happen. And I feel like I want to have a little, I want to call it not a debate, but just something more than people just saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. I always hate that because sometimes I watch a video and I feel like he says something, but I don't feel, how does that make sense? But I can't ask there, right? So I want to have the opportunity to ask. And maybe, worst thing can happen. I can learn from it. But on the other hand, maybe we can come to some more specific answers, because there are just things that he sometimes says, and that leads me to Altseason. He says, for example, Altseason can only happen if Bitcoin goes to new all-time highs. And I just look at these charts and I'm like, but why? Why do you think that? Why do you say that? Because, do I see all the comments, by the way? I don't know. Well, because it's, yeah, not true from the charts that I look at, right? So about Altseason. Is it likely to happen or not? Whether we have a 4-year cycle or an extended cycle, right? Well, first thing, what we saw earlier, the Fed balance sheet. So far, Altseason has 100% correlation with the Fed balance sheet. As long as it's not QT, we always have Altseason. We just got the message that QT is going to stop. So if it's indeed still correlated, then, well, bam, there we go. Apart from that, yeah, look, if we look at this, for example, right, the dominance, just one thing, the dominance for Bitcoin, Ethereum, stable coins like USDT, USDC, and DAI, etc., looks like this, right? Yeah, from what I know, this is an oscillator, and again, it's there's always a chance that it goes up, right? But I also feel like, for people that say Altseason is not going to happen, you're basically saying, well, we look at an oscillator and it's not going to oscillate anymore. How is that the best bet to take, right? Isn't an oscillator oscillating, right? And is that just not part of a market cycle where you have an accumulation phase, uptrend, distribution, downtrend, accumulation, uptrend, distribution, downtrend, right? If this chart goes down, that's a full-on Altseason. Look, I mean, I think there's no one, if you send them this chart and you would say it's a coin or a stock or whatever, that they would say, oh, I'm going to buy this, right? So what they actually say is, I'm bearish on this chart, so I'm bullish on Altseason, right? But if you show that chart like that, they will, yeah, I don't know. They will never admit that. But it's the same thing. Also, if we look at the Bitcoin dominance, for example, it's also quite interesting, right? And we overlay the Altseason chart on that. So here's the Altseason chart, right? And I think that if I am bearish on this, I would say this is in a downtrend, or at least, yeah, it's so far in higher lows and lower highs. But I would say worst case, it's diminishing, and we'll get here. But then again, this altcoin is outperforming 110k Bitcoin. Yeah, they don't have to outperform that Bitcoin that much, right? Here we were outperforming at 30k Bitcoin. Yeah, that's fine. There's now a lot more liquidity in Bitcoin, so we don't need to outperform it by that much. But still, that will be the worst case scenario, in my opinion. The oscillating case is just we go somewhere around this level, right? What I see a lot of people say is there won't be an alt season. So the worst case scenario in that case is that we go forever sideways or down forever or whatever the fuck. And I feel like, okay, fine. But this level has been support since 2017, right? We had it here later in 2017. We had it in 2019. We had it in 2020. We had it later in 2020. We had one quick wick below it. And that's it. And now we're all the way back here, and we bottomed here exactly in June this year again. So this level means something. I do, but fuck that. Also, I guess doesn't matter. But if you overlay the Bitcoin dominance on the actual altcoin chart, because this is total 3 ESBTC, right? And that's also something with Ben Cowan that I feel like, I don't know, because he looks at the total 3 minus USDT divided by Bitcoin. Look, that's nice, right? So we know how everything total 3 is everything in the top 125, excluding Bitcoin and ETH. And we also extract USDT. So this is everything in the top 125 without Bitcoin, ETH, and USDT on its Bitcoin pair. And we try to say like, well, that's alts on their Bitcoin pair. But if I look at how what else is in the top 125, then I feel like, man, I don't know about that, because we also have USDC, which is a market cap of $70 billion. Ethena USDC, or USD, whatever the hell, 10 billion. And then we have all these, this whole list right here, from here, from this, that's all included, right? So we are mostly measuring some altcoins and the stable coin market against Bitcoin. And I'm saying some altcoins because it's not even just altcoins, because what's also seen as altcoins, what do you think about wrapped ETH, right? Wrapped Bitcoin, wrapped ETH, right here again, wrapped ETH, right? These are all wrapped versions of Ethereum and Bitcoin. Technically, that's an altcoin, but they are packed with ETH and Bitcoin. So it says nothing about the actual altcoins that we are looking at. So this chart has little to do with alts, actually. Therefore, I feel like I don't really know why Ben in that specific case looks at this chart. Because we can still have this as a target. But yeah, then again, if you look at a chart that actually excludes stable coins, then we already went to the range low. So are we not just waiting for something that happened already like 5 months ago, 4 months ago? So yeah, I don't know about that. But then again, we are also, what I wanted to say is, we are really focused on the Bitcoin dominance, right? Bitcoin dominance can go up. Look, Bitcoin dominance can go up, right? I would say best case scenario, it makes a lower high right here. But who knows, this whole pattern, it doesn't make sense anymore. But in my opinion, we had the reversal, and some people said like, well, no, this was the first stop, and then we go down, and then we do this. I feel like because that happened before, we will do that again. In that case, I'm still fucking bullish on altcoins, because if we have to repeat the last cycle, then we have to repeat this move down as well, right? Or is that something that we say, nah, we don't gonna repeat that? Like, then it's not like fair anymore, right? But anyway, if we overlay the actual altcoin market on its Bitcoin pair, so Altseason with Bitcoin dominance, I feel like, hey, there's something that kind of stands out to me, because altcoin market on its Bitcoin pair, we are now at the exact same level as where we were here in August 2024, right? Same level right here. But the Bitcoin dominance was lower there than what it is right now, because Bitcoin went up, right? And Bitcoin dominance is also measuring against stables, not just alts, right? So this is showing us that Bitcoin dominance can go up whatever it wants. It doesn't have to say anything about altcoins. Again, Bitcoin dominance went up in that period, but altcoins didn't go down against Bitcoin. So I feel like certain, I don't know how I came to this, but certain people who look at certain charts coming to certain conclusions, and a lot of people blindly following just that, I feel like be a little careful, because there are like holes in these charts. There are like, it's not everything, right? It's not everything. So I think that's interesting. Let me check. Cowan is GOAT. Yeah, look, I mean, he is I think that no content creator has a better track record than he has. Incredible. But I also see why it could go wrong right now, because his reasons are, for example, he says just no matter what, Bitcoin dominance will go up, and I feel like, but no matter what, like there are really reasons that I can even give why it will go down. So he's starting to become really biased, and again, the reasons. Also, Altseason won't happen because it's QT. That was, if you remember him, that was his narrative this whole year. QT is now stopping, but now that suddenly doesn't matter anymore. Like it starts to become a little, I don't want to say hypocritical, but just he just said it's not going to happen, and that's just his reason, because it is his reason. And yeah, also like I just said, like the charts that he looks at are not really the charts that are telling the full story. So I think that's where he's going to make the mistake. But we'll find out, man. The stock market does stop while fear and greed is below neutral for long time. Can you give a specific example? We want video with you and Cowan. Me too. Maybe it's career suicide. I don't know. But I just like to the things that I just addressed. Maybe he can say like, yeah, no, but it's because of this and that. And then I'm like, oh, okay. But then you should explain. But maybe he's also like, oh yeah, I should look at that. I don't know. But I just like some clarity about certain things that nobody is asking him. And I don't know why, because it's not that I'm so much smarter than any other fucking YouTuber out there that doesn't ask him that. So I wonder, like, why are people not like asking him questions, right? We can all ask him, like, what do you think is going to happen to Altcoin? We all know that. I'm not going to invite him to the channel for that. Like, what's that kind of nonsense? So yeah, Alts Bitcoin does bottom on QT ends, but both Bitcoin and Alts starts going down. But alts were so down, they went less lower than Bitcoin. I have a hard time trying to understand your way of typing. Also, Pi cycle is not gonna hit, as Bitcoin needs to go above 300k. Yeah, but then it's not gonna hit as long as Bitcoin is below 300k, because now you're saying it cannot go above 300k. Look, I'm not saying that it's a given like Bitcoin will go above 300k, but I am saying Bitcoin is the type of asset that people always said like, oh, it will never go that high, and then it went higher, and then that. So I don't want to jump in like, well, it cannot go that high, because that's the ultimate form to get wrecked. But the Pi cycle, I have to look at the moving averages where they should be in order to get there, but it could be that will be around 300k Bitcoin. Yeah, don't like be careful ruling things out. I would say. Let me put it like that at least. But alt Bitcoin do not bottom or does bottom on QTN, but both. I have no clue what you mean by that. Can you elaborate a little bit more? We definitely could still see a big crash for altcoins before pump if the Bitcoin dominance will rise a lot higher, like Cowan predicts. Alts will melt probably, maybe, but that's like if right. Again, if the Bitcoin dominance will go higher, look, I don't know. Altcoin, look, there are also a lot of reasons why that can't happen, right? And that's the thing, like with his content, I think like it's good to be cautious, but it's so negative, right? Because he addresses like this is the reason why it can go up, but why don't you address the reason why it can also go down? Because it's not that it can't, right? But he never talks about that, and I feel like, oh, why? Like at least like mention it. But look, if the Bitcoin dominance goes up really hard, because Ethereum starts to underperform only against Bitcoin, but altcoins outperform Ethereum because that's the part of the money rotation, then it could still be that altcoins go up while the Bitcoin dominance goes up as well. Another thing, if the Bitcoin dominance goes up really hard because Bitcoin goes to fucking 500K, let's say, right? Like, don't think that that's going to happen, but it's an extreme example, right? Because Bitcoin dominance, it's how Bitcoin does against everything, also against stables. That's why we just saw, like, if you overlay that Altseason chart from this point, right? Bitcoin dominance is up, right? From this point in August 2024, it's up. But altcoins on the Bitcoin pair are at the same price. So it shows like, hey, Bitcoin dominance can go up. Doesn't mean that altcoins will go down necessarily. But yeah, apart from that, I feel like this is obviously like it's kind of coincident that we got the reversal rejection exactly at this trend line, isn't it? And apart from, I think short term going above 60.5%, that's gonna be a big fucking challenge for the Bitcoin dominance, actually. And I have a couple of reasons of saying that, and I've said it before, but I deleted all my drawings, unfortunately, so I have to see how I can get those back again. How the fuck did I do that shit? I think it is it wasn't like that. I think it's like something like this, I guess. This diagonal line, which was dragging it up, right? You could also say like, well, it was like this, but then the structure is even more broken, so that's even more bearish for the Bitcoin dominance. But let's say it is wick to wick or whatever. You can say this diagonal line brings some good resistance at, that level right there. Then we also have a horizontal resistance, which is big, right? Which is big. Because if you look at this level right here, this level was where we had the rejection in November, December, where we basically saw a pretty good altcoin run, right? When we tried to get above, we were struggling, and retesting this for a long time as well meant a lot again, right? When we went above it and we went down, we retested that level again as well. So it makes sense that this is now also resistance. So that's reason number two, apart from what it did in the past. Like, this is a huge level. Reason number three, though, is that the Fibonacci, like you see that fib on the Bitcoin dominance means something, right? This, like, again, could be coincidence, all of it, but hey, again, we got the reversal at the 786. But if you look at the shorter term Fibonacci, where this comes in, and not just a Fibonacci, but the 382, which is a big level, is also at that 60.5% level. And then we have two big moving averages, like the bull market support band comes in at that level. But then we have the one that matters maybe even more, which is the 50 weekly moving average, comes in at that level. So I do feel like, okay, 60 and a half, 61%. Good fucking luck. Um, so in my opinion, one, it is really hard for the Bitcoin dominance to like make a new high. I doubt it. Um, but two, yeah, even if it doesn't necessarily have to mean that altcoins are going to go down. Um, and three, it could, right? It could definitely that they go down on one less push. Um, yeah, and again, that's fine. I'm not saying that the bottom is in, right? And I'm not talking about this wick because this wick, yeah, again, I said it before, but this should be erased from trading view. Um, because of a flaw of exchanges, altcoins got liquidated and therefore went temporarily in 10 minutes to zero. Yeah, fucked up if you were leverage trading, right? But if you were spot holding, yeah, it didn't mean crap, right? Nobody was able to buy it up anyway. So I'm like, could it make a double bottom or slightly higher low or slightly lower low, something like that? Maybe, maybe not. But I also feel like tomato, right? Are we going to try to time it in the first place? Yeah, I don't think it's wise. Or then BTC pumps hard and others just lag behind for a moment. Maybe, man. Maybe. Look, I cannot be bearish on a Bitcoin pump. But at this stage of the market, I also can be bearish on a Bitcoin dump because we also saw that every alt season so far started on a Bitcoin dump of 30%. And therefore, I feel like what Colin said, like we need Bitcoin at all-time highs. I'm like, but why? Like, but why? But we were making all. What is then all-time high enough? It's not that alt season starts on a Bitcoin all-time high, but it is already in all-time high territory, right? But here we were as well. Here we were as well. Like, where do we need to go then? So I don't really get that. But if you look at this alt season chart, right, and we overlay Bitcoin, look here in when we started alt season right here. When did we start? There was this for Bitcoin, right? So it didn't start on a Bitcoin all-time high. It started during a Bitcoin 30% correction. It doesn't look like much, but this was a 30% correction for Bitcoin. That's where alt season started. And you could say like, well, that's just one time. Here, it's even a worse example. Look, altcoins on the Bitcoin pair went from 0.26 or so to 1.3, right? They outperformed the shit out of Bitcoin. When did that start? Not during a Bitcoin correction, during the blow off top in 2017. That was the top, right? So I don't know. So far, alt season only started during either a Bitcoin top or at least a 30% correction. So I'm like, maybe that's just what we need. Maybe, and it makes sense. I said before, whales make alt season, right? They see that Bitcoin is no longer profitable. Bitcoin is stalling out. Bitcoin dominance is stalling out. So these whales are like, okay, that's that. Next. And they rotate into alts. And that pumps fucking hard because liquidity from Bitcoin to alts. Crazy. That pumps really hard. And then retail sees that and be like, ooh, altcoins, let's get in. Right? And that brings retail in and they do the final pump and we can dump on them. That's like, it makes all the sense, actually. Glab, you and Colin. Yeah, I would love to. But more like a debate, probably. I'm up for it, man. You cannot put everything in the chart and then read it in the same way. So that's stupid. You cannot put everything in the chart and read it in the same way. I don't know what I don't know what you mean actually. Is that based on what we just looked at, or based on what Colin said, or based on what I looked at earlier, or what do you mean? Um, but overall, I don't know if that's what you mean, but I do feel like yeah, you cannot look, for example, at a chart like, hey, last year in November we went up, so we will go up this year in November as well. Like that's indeed like stupid in my opinion. If we get rate cuts, but the interest rates will still stay a lot higher than in the last bull runs for the end of this year. Look, I mean, the market so far moved on what the rates were. So wherever the rates are going, if it gets lower, then that's better for the market, right? And I don't think like it's that simple actually. Most important chart for altcoins is the others. The VIX using line chart draw trend line starting May 2014, high all the way until now, connecting the highs, lows in between to best fit. Yeah, you can do that. I haven't looked at that, but the reason that I don't really like others is I looked at that for a long time, but others is also not really representing altcoins, right? Others is everything in the top 125, excluding the top 10, right? So it's basically Cardano up till whatever the fuck is at 125. But again, we include a lot of stable coins. We include a lot of Bitcoin and Ethereum in a wrapped version. So in my opinion, like, why not look at the total tree excluding stablecoins, right? Then we include altcoins, BNB, XP, Solana are altcoins, and we don't include stables. So that's more interesting, in my opinion. I didn't compare these charts. Total 3. Yes. And why do we draw a trend line from 2000? It doesn't take it back to 2014 May, which is here. It doesn't really make sense. If you do it from April, then you get it like somewhat like this. It depends a little how you connect the dots. I mean, it depends where you take it from. You can also draw it like this, right? It's the last 5 years. Yeah, there's always something to be found depending on how you draw a line on which chart, of course. Cowan noted that the end of QT is not certainly bullish for Bitcoin either. It's not certain, but it's certain better than QT, right? Like it's we have quantitative tightening, right, which is always worse than no quantitative tightening. Like it's not a guarantee that it will like make everything go up like crazy. For sure it doesn't, right? But it's at least better. Quantitative tightening, it's just simply not helpful, right? That's simply what it is. So if we overlay the Fed balance sheet on Bitcoin and we have a little bit more history, look, there's something to be said, right? Because here, quantitative tightening, it started, right? This point right here. Yeah, first Bitcoin was in a bear market, then it went sideways, and then it went into a full bull market, right? So it's like, yeah, Bitcoin doesn't really give a fuck about that, but I think that the Fed balance sheet has a better impact on the real risk assets, not necessarily Bitcoin. So yeah. TikTok, we don't have much time left for Altseason. Yeah, it's really hard to react to that because I just want to like know why. Like, well, why? Like, is there a clock anywhere? But maybe, man. Look, the thing is, I don't know when you joined the stream, but at the beginning I mentioned like how much the 4-year cycle has an impact. What's still accurate about the 4-year cycle, what's not accurate, and what we also should look at. If somebody is in the camp that again that like no, it's just 4 years, despite everything, then yeah, still it could mean Bitcoin tops out in January, right? It's just as 4 years. But we also saw in 2017, Altseason started when Bitcoin topped out. So, and all seasons also don't take that long, right? It can go up very hard in a very short time. Like for me, if alt season happens within now and the end of this week, I'm also fine with it, right? Means only that it goes higher for shorter. I don't really care how long it is going to take. I care about how high it's going. In your opinion, how much reach the total crypto market cap this cycle? It's hard to say, man. It's hard to say. There are so many ways to look at this, and look, you for example can say, right, well, Fibonacci tool, if you look at the last cycle, if you want to take it a little exact, it took it to the 3.618, right, give or take the 3.618. Yeah, if you overlay that on this cycle, the 3.618, then that's sitting at $9 trillion. You could say like Fibonacci is diminishing, which is kind of fucking bullshit, of course. But if you want to be careful about it, you could of course say like, well, let's be careful. Let's take it one step back. Yeah, then it goes to the 2.618. So far, it's almost touched. I didn't draw it that perfectly actually, but so far, it almost touched the 1.618. And that's also a level. So it could be that it's also that it's just 1.618, 4.5 trillion also. Right? And then you might feel like, well, that's not that far from here. It doesn't matter. If you are in altcoins, it doesn't really matter that much. At this point, we don't need new money. Like, would be nice, of course, always. But it's just like the money rotation that's so far been is happening should just continue. That's the only condition to make altcoins go up. Things should just continue as they do right now, right? Because Bitcoin moved, Ethereum moved, the high caps moved. Well, go on, like go on with that. That's fine, right? And that there's a lot of money right there. Somebody said, "Can I join you just with beer and weed to chill?" I don't smoke weed, but beer is always welcome. So definitely, dude. Bitcoin has 2 weekly stochastic crosses, with follow through a year since existence. We only had one so far. People need to relax. 2 weekly stochastic crosses. Stochastic crosses. Jesus. Weekly stochastic? You mean the stochastic RSI? I don't even have it here, I think. I have no clue what you mean, actually. But it could be. Good morning, my bro. Good morning. I was like, I'm just gonna do this for 35 minutes. So I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm in front of your house. Yeah, but dude, this is my office. It doesn't work like that. You're waving to my windows now. My man, I really respect above all other YouTubers, so-called gurus. You are the guru, and thanks. I know about that. I respect. I really appreciate that. But we'll see. Look, maybe I'm fucking wrong about everything, but I just really try to look at that, and then just come to a conclusion, because I don't know, man. We'll find out. But if you ask me, seasonality, it's just one of the indicators. And then we should also take a look at the rest of the indicators and then come to a conclusion, and not just stick with it's the same as last cycle, looking at all the TA, right, and saying, well, pi cycle topped, or pi cycle top indicated flash, the rest didn't, but this is the only one that matters, so I'm selling now, right? Like it's like that. And I feel like, but there's more than just that. Fib levels are early confluence. It's order blocks and fair value gaps, supply demand. Bitcoin dominance formed a model, one wick of distribution, three thrives of ice and broke structure, bearish on weekly. I don't know. So far, it does work on Bitcoin dominance, actually. But overall, I just think that we can look at patterns. We can take a look at this, at that. The only thing I think that's really accurate always is just trend, right? Trend. And how is it trending right now? Short term, it's trending up. Long term, it's trending with lower highs and higher lows. So at a certain point, this trend will also break, and then we'll find out. But for now, then it's safe to say that, like, okay, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. Don't make it harder than it is. And whatever happens in the meantime, fuck that. I'm not trying to time the short-term top or bottom anyway. So yeah. Bitcoin chart on Coinbase does not have such a wick. Yeah, great, good job, Coinbase, because nothing should have that wick anywhere because it doesn't mean shit. Actually, in my opinion. What do you think about the Bitcoin about the Binance CEO getting pardoned by Donald Trump? It can only be bullish, right? Like it's just the message. Like I don't think it doesn't mean much itself, but it's just a positive message towards crypto, and I think that can only help. At the end of the day, I don't think it really doesn't do much though. But if anything, it could only be helpful. Do you believe bull run is still intact if Bitcoin makes weekly closes below 80K? Yeah, I do. Because it is very simple in my book. What is a bull market and what is a bear market? Well, a bull market is an uptrend. What is an uptrend? An uptrend is higher highs and higher lows, right? And if we look where the latest lower low is, right, or higher low is, that's here, and that's sitting at 75K. So yeah, you can say whatever you want. Anything above 75K is still technically a bull market. So if you ask me, by all means, like we go down to, I don't know, 80K, still bull market. That's still bullish. If we go below 75K, I would say bull market over. That would be my confirmation that the bull market is over. And I know that now also a lot of people are in the camp that they say like that why is it gone again? What the fuck? Where are you, my weekly little sweetheart? Well, just use this then. I know that a lot of people are also now, thanks to Ben, in the camp like, well, now if it has two closes below the 50 weekly moving average, then it's over, because that's always the case. And then I think like, yeah, you can hear somebody say that, or you can fact check that for yourself, because from what I see here, it had a lot of closes below that, but that wasn't the end of the bull market. That kind of like didn't mean shit, right? So every time we go into a bear market, we close below the 50 weekly moving average. That's true. But it's not that every time we close below the 50 weekly moving average, we go into a bear market, right? There was a very clear, we had two closes right here, or many. We had many closes right here. And even here earlier, we were above it in the bull, and we still closed below it. And no, it didn't matter. Like, it's simply not true. So yeah, I don't know why. I don't know. BNB will overtake Ethereum? I don't think so. No, I doubt it. Well, it is outperforming actually. Yeah. Well, to be fair, long term, look, it has some trouble, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You could say like, well, it is kind of in somewhat of a range high right now, and this is it. Look, I mean, I say, well, never, no way. Like one day something will overtake one thing, but it 3x. Yeah, by the time BNB 3x's, I think that Ethereum also is up again. So it might happen, but I don't think anytime soon. Let me put it like that at least. Rotation of money is coming. Yeah, rotation of money is already there, right? We had Bitcoin, we had ETH, we had high cap. So it's happening as we speak, and people still say Altseason is not going to happen. Yeah, I find it hard to find a reason why Altseason might not happen. And I haven't really found one reason, actually. Somebody said, yeah, but maybe we would need a lot lower rates for Altseason to happen to get this crazy risk appetite. But I don't know, just thinking maybe. But then again, I also feel like if that's the case, then why is the money in crypto already rotating lower? I don't know. Bitcoin does what it should, but alts are like penny stocks. They don't perform well in this type market conditions when safe assets are outperforming. That's always the case, right? I mean, that's normal. Right? Again, if we look at Altseason chart, yeah, we had here as well. We went into a full bull market, went into a bear market. We went sideways very long. We got a big capitulation, and then we again went into a bull market. We went into a bear market, sideways very long, big capitulation. It's not different, actually. So yeah. Alt Bitcoin did bottom during the end of QT. There you go. Alt Bitcoin bottom during the end of QT in 2019, but doesn't mean that they went up in dollar value. Instead, they went down in USD value. But Bitcoin drops more than alts, so end of QT doesn't mean Altseason. Well, it does, because Altseason definition is where altcoins outperform Bitcoin. It doesn't matter what altcoins on the dollar pair do. So, yeah, right. But still, like, yeah, it could be that altcoins are gonna outperform Bitcoin and that Bitcoin is gonna go down. And then people say, well, fuck, Altseason never came. That is Altseason, but it's just not altcoins on the dollar pair. In that case, have more patience. Who gives a fuck? Then you have more Bitcoin. You know, Bitcoin is going to $1 million one day. So fuck that. Yeah, look, Bitcoin has to drop like a lot in order for that, because again, in 2017, Bitcoin had a full blow off top and went into a bear market, and altcoins outperformed Bitcoin. But during that period, altcoins on the dollar pair also 5x'd. So it depends how hard one outperforms against how hard the other underperforms. There's still CME gap at 90k. Nice. There's also still a CME cap at 6k somewhere. Gold, silver are really hitting all-time high. Yeah, it's nice, man. I think that's a lot of extra fuel in the tank. I cannot be like that bearish on it. Gold going up really hard. Yeah, look. Where's Bitcoin? Anyway. Look, gold going up really hard. Like, for example, here, gold, gold done. And then Bitcoin can go, like now. Also, another reason why this might be all extended, right? That this wasn't even really a bull market for Bitcoin to begin. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. Yeah, so people are saying like worst case scenarios that we get Altseason during a huge Bitcoin dump. Could be. It's a possibility, right? But yeah, again, then still it depends how hard are altcoins outperforming Bitcoin and how hard is Bitcoin going down, right? Again, here Bitcoin went down in 2017, went into the bear market, right? And altcoins outperformed Bitcoin. from that day, from December 7 or December 11 to January 1st, right? But if we look at altcoins on the dollar pair did back then, December 11 to January 1st, which was here to here. What the fuck? Oh, that's weird. They 5x'd anyway, right? So they just outperformed Bitcoin harder than Bitcoin went down. And that's not really that hard because there is a lot of liquidity in Bitcoin, right? So it takes nothing. $1 of liquidity in the altcoin market can equal $5 market cap. Yeah, we'll see, but everything is possible, man. Don't you think there are too many alts? No, I think that's such bullshit. Like, if somebody in crypto is completely new and somehow enters on Pump Fun or whatever and buys all kind of weird shit there, yeah, that person might miss out on Altseason, right? Because that's not where Altseason is going. But if somebody with a bit of experience and just invests in mostly top 125, maybe some top 500, like $50 million market cap coins here and there, fine, right? But the fact that there now are millions of coins that are already rugged, yeah, look, it's very simple. They add up to the total list, but the liquidity can't go there, right? So they don't actually participate in all of this. So no, I don't think so. It doesn't. This is my last concern, actually. Do you think that the price of a coin is a huge factor for the normal retail Joe? I think most will look at cheap prices and not just the market cap. Yeah, I think there's some psychology to it. Yeah, sure. Yeah, hit the like, hit it. I don't know why people always say like, hit it, because you're actually smacking your phone, but yeah, would be nice. Last one, and I'm gonna wrap it up. Germany, France, Australia, India, China, USA, and almost all the markets went all-time high this month, including commodities. So very high chance of money rotating to Bitcoin. It's been 110K range for 10 months. There's a good chance that it will rotate, indeed. I don't know how fast stock money is going to crypto, but yeah, there's something there, right? Definitely now that the USA is involved in it. But it's in a range for 10 months. Yeah, Bitcoin is a little like, but it's also because maybe it depends on our expectations, right? Because if you look at 2017, you might be like, well, that never went sideways for fucking 10 months, right? That never happened. Because 2017 was just up. It was crazy. But therefore, we also got such a fat blow off top eventually. Oh, that was 2013, right? But yeah, I mean, in 2021 as well, it depends a little how you look at it, right? But here we were at 40K in February, and here in April, a year later, we were at the same price as well. But this market already showed like it's more steps, right? It goes up, it goes sideways from March until October, and then it goes up, and then it goes sideways from February until October, right? Almost a year as well, and then it goes up, and it just goes like, and therefore also I don't think it's gonna top out right now. Another reason, like, it's too steady, right? It's too steady. There is no euphoria, there is no blow off top, there's nothing. It's just up, chilling, little down, sweep these lows, and then up again. And it's just taking its time. So there's no reason chart wise as well to just like, so yeah. Yeah, that was a long one. I'm gonna wrap it up right here. Thanks for watching. But overall, bullish of the fucking hell. The moral of the story is it just looks really bullish in my opinion. But it's a patience game, and I think that's where people have most trouble with, right? Like waiting. Also, especially with altcoins. It's never gonna happen. Why? Because it didn't happen yet. Yeah, okay. Um, like, man, you're panic selling your patience. Like, you should not do that. I think we should just be patient. Like, again, alt season. Yeah, I'm waiting on it for a year already, right? I expected it at the end of last year. Fucking wrong, definitely. Then again, we have the same prices back then, right? So as long as you don't time capitulate, who cares, really, right? Um, so don't invest more than you can lose, yada yada yada, and it will be fine, right? Like, remember, there is so much liquidity in Bitcoin right now. A little money in the altcoin market from Bitcoin, and it will explode. And do you honestly think that the whales in Bitcoin, after they see, like, well, okay, the ride is over, that they feel like, well, I'm out? Of course not. They want to go. They like making money, so they will put it in alts then, right? So it's the same as here, as January 2000. The sentiment sucked, right? Everybody was so bearish, more than here right now, right? Yeah, and it went up. Why? Because Bitcoin was almost twice above its previous all-time high, just as now. And that money flew into the altcoin market, which was sitting at lows on the Bitcoin pair, just like now. And that takes nothing to pump these altcoins. Right? So people could say, like, well, no, there's no retail right now. Of course. And there will be no retail as long as we don't get an alt season first. Because we don't need retail for an alt season. We have whales for that. We need an alt season to get these retail, right? And yeah, the liquidity is there. Like, I think it's stupid to bet against it. I think. Plus, the people that are now betting against it, and that say, like, oh, it's low, don't buy. These are the same people that were having no problems buying when it was higher. So now that it is lower risk, higher reward, why are you not buying now? What the fuck are you doing, man? Like, right? But okay. That's it. I invested a 10K loan in alts, and that was stupid as fuck. I'm happy that you realized that, so that I don't have to say that. Been there, by the way. Don't do that. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm really happy that you guys all joined it. I don't know how the fuck this works. Okay, like the stream if you like the stream, and I think this is how I end it. So, bye bye.